The information that is provided in this video can possibly save you from the physical or mental abuse of a potential mate who had a history of violence and dishonesty. Imagine how you'll be able to save yourself grief and heartache simply by checking his driving record to discover drunken driving charges, or by reviewing his divorce files to see that he had abused his wife. Is his address of the past and present what he says it is? Does he have a valid license? Does he have an excessive amount of traffic tickets? Are the tickets for speeding, reckless, or drunken driving? If he was arrested for drunken driving charges, does the police report reflect the date of birth, place of employment that your friend had told you about? Does he own the vehicles that he says he owns? Are they registered at an address that may be a girlfriend or a wife? You can easily get a copy of his driving record. When writing to request a copy of the subject's driving record, include the date of birth. If you do not have an exact date of birth for the subject, write and ask for an alphabetical search. If the driving record division writes to you and says there are many individuals who have your subject's name with that year of birth, you'll want to write back and give the area of the state in which the subject resides. If you receive several driving records and do not know which is your subject, don't despair. Driving records may contain some or all of the following, which will assist you in determining which of the licensees is your subject: address, height, weight, hair color, eye color, social security number, date of birth, dates and locations of accidents, dates and locations of traffic tickets, restrictions, i.e. eyeglasses. This driving record lists numerous tickets, but of importance is the violation for improper child restraint device. This may lead you to children that your friend has not told you about. At the very least, you'll want him to take the proper precautions with your own child. This typical response for a driving record illustrates that this individual has a clear driving record for the past 3 years. It's important to note that the original application date was 2/4/74 when this person was 25 years old. Is it believable that your friend was 25 years old when he first became licensed? You may check out his past addresses by running his social security number. And here are the addresses to write to for driving records. Most states will keep a driving record on file permanently if the person had any suspensions or revocations. This policy is very useful because you may need to look up the address your friend had 20 years ago in a particular state, even though he had moved to another state. When you do not receive a prompt response from motor vehicle departments, write to the governor of a state. You'll no doubt on occasion have a response from a clerk that is unsatisfactory when requesting records. Write to the governor attaching a copy of the response that you are unhappy about. If your subject appears to be a person who will not give proper information on any licenses or other documents, then traffic tickets will be of assistance. If your subject's driving record indicates traffic violations, take note of the jurisdiction or location that issued the ticket. Write to that authority and request a photocopy of the ticket. On the ticket will be the make, model, and license number of the vehicle the subject was driving when stopped for the citation. You will want to write to the Motor Vehicle Registration Department supplying the license plate number of the vehicle. Many times, the registration that you receive to the vehicle will indicate ownership of a person other than your subject, such as a wife, girlfriend, phony company name used as a front, or possibly another name used by your subject. Also note that the telephone number of your friend may be on the ticket along with his date of birth and home address. After you have the subject's driving record and address, you may discover that the address is not the current one. Of course, there are many ways to receive a person's new address, but you may want to write to the appropriate motor vehicle department. Request a list of all motor vehicles listed in the subject's name. Please note that all government agencies, including driving and motor vehicle records departments, are constantly changing policies insofar as what access to records and files will be accorded the public. For instance, a marriage record is public record in Dade County, Florida, whereas a marriage record is not public in any of the 5 boroughs of New York City. A driving record is not public record in California, but in most other states it is. If the driving record is not available to you, then use the other sources in this video to check him out, such as divorce records, voter registration, property records, hunting and fishing licenses, etc. If your subject's driving record indicates an accident, you'll want to order a copy of the accident report. This report will help you find out about the other party in the accident or other people in the automobile, such as a wife, children, or girlfriend. If the accident report indicates that your subject was at fault, your subject may have been sued or will be facing a court date in the near future. You'll need the other party's information because you'll want to search the public records for a suit filed by this party. Pay particular attention to the subpoena the subject was served and the address at which they were served. If any damages were awarded which exceeded the subject's insurance coverage, there will be numerous records indicating the liens and attachments that have been filed. If your subject was not at fault, then they may have filed suit. You'll want to review the files of any litigation. You can be assured that any address listed for your subject will be accurate because the subject had filed this suit with the intent of collecting damages. This correct address may lead you to a spouse. You may order accident reports from the jurisdiction noted on the driving record. The state police agencies listed here will usually have a copy of every accident involving damage and injuries. If the jurisdiction on the accident report is unclear, the state police will be able to either provide you a copy of the accident report or will evaluate the accident location and advise you exactly where to make your inquiry so you'll be able to pull all the files. Divorce files are filed in the county where the divorce took place. Write or visit the County Hall of Records, and with only a name, date of birth not required, you'll be able to have access to the file. A review of a divorce file may yield much information. The name of the spouse will permit you to contact the individual if you choose. The name and ages of the children may not be exactly what you are told. The date and place of marriage will give you another document to review. Houses, land, automobiles, boats, and other marital assets will be listed. It's important to see what your subject retained after the divorce. Will your friend be required to make the house payments? The divorce file will contain a list of vehicles owned by the couple. See which vehicle your subject took possession of. You'll want to know if there are any vacation homes. Will this property still be jointly owned? Did your subject physically or mentally abuse his wife? The divorce file will note any allegations if this was a basis for the divorce. Your subject may be required to keep health insurance for the wife and/or children for a specified period of time. Life insurance naming the children as a beneficiary is required by court order to be enforced, but a policy that names you as a beneficiary is not. What are the costs of the health and life insurance policies? The premiums on these policies may have to be paid for as long as 18 years. If the wife had requested a restraining order and one was, in fact, issued, then you may want to get a copy of the restraining order. See how long the order will be in effect. Marriage records will provide much information about the bride and groom. If you do not know if your subject is married, order a search conducted for a span of several years. If there is a divorce indicated, you may want to order a copy of the divorce file. There is much information that can be learned from just reviewing a marriage index. Date of birth of the bride and groom are listed. Also, you'll be able to obtain the maiden name of the wife. You will need to contact each jurisdiction regarding the release of all records, including marriage. Some agencies restrict the release of records. If you cannot get a marriage certificate, then continue by checking all other types of records. Write to the appropriate state agency to check divorces for the entire state if you do not find a divorce on file in the county records. Birth records will usually contain the following information: complete name. You'll want an exact name when checking the motor vehicle records. A middle name is of importance because many individuals use a middle name prominently later on. For example, G. Gordon Liddy and J. Edgar Hoover. Subject's exact date of birth. If you do not have the exact date of birth of your subject, you would have ordered a search for a particular year or a span of several years to find the birth certificate. Now that you have the birth record, you now have the exact date of birth. Place of birth. There is much research that can be done when you are aware of the place of birth of your subject. You may want to search for other relatives at the city of birth. Name of father and mother. From the birth record, you now have the complete name of the father and mother. If you feel that the subject's parents may be alive, then you can conduct a search of the motor vehicle records for their location. Age of the father and mother. Birth records will usually contain the age, but not the exact date of birth of the parents. The age of the parents at the time of birth of the subject will give you an approximate year of birth. Occupation of the father and mother. If you have a problem with finding the parents, check trade associations and unions if the parents had occupations that required participation or membership. Other information includes mother's maiden name, address of father and mother, and place of birth of the father and mother. The birth certificate of your subject would be one avenue to explore in your search for information. You may also want to contact the physician listed on the birth record for additional information about the location of your subject's family. You may be requesting death certificates on persons other than your subject. The reason for this is in order to do a background profile on a subject that has not left much of a paper trail. The best way to get information is to locate the subject's family and make inquiries. Every death record will have a physician's name certifying the cause of death. Many times the family physician will be the official who attests to the cause of death. This physician may be of some assistance in locating family members. In certain instances, the family can give you information about your friend. Contact the appropriate medical board and they will give you the current address of the medical practitioner. Death records provide the following: a person's complete name, date of death, date of birth, social security number, place of birth, occupation, place of death, cause of death, name of the father and mother, mother's maiden name, name and address of cemetery or crematory, name of physician that certified cause of death. Death records are of value because you may want to order a search to be conducted on the parent or a relative of your subject. A Social Security number is of great use in finding someone. You can find out the Social Security number of someone through voters' registration records, driving records from certain states, mortgage paperwork, and other public records such as summons and child support orders. Before 1977, Social Security numbers were assigned when a person applied, usually at the age of 13. The first three numbers reflect the state the applicant resided in when they made an application to the Social Security Administration. If your subject says he has always lived in New York but has a Social Security number that starts with 570, you may want to intensify your background check to include the state represented by that three-digit preface. If your friend was ever named in a paternity suit, then you may have access to tax returns, business records, savings and checking account information, and a full financial statement. Subpoenas and summons will have the Social Security number next to the name. The home address of the defendant will also appear. Is this the address that you knew nothing about? You can use a company in Miami to run Social Security numbers. It is the Research Is Company. This firm does not advertise, as its clients are investigative firms and governments, and they keep their telephone number unlisted. However, orders are accepted from the public. Research Is Company provides a Social Security number address update report. If you know your subject's Social Security number, you may submit a request for a search to be conducted on this number. Research Is charges a fee of $35 and is the only company that will not charge a fee for an unsuccessful search. Research Is Company has an excellent system for nationwide checks of listed telephone numbers. They charge $40 for the first 100 names and $25 for every 100 names thereafter. As a result of numerous requests, the Research Is Company has literature on products they now sell that as a viewer of When in Doubt, Check Him Out, you may be interested in. The items include stun guns, hot repellent, special personal protection devices, electronic and visual surveillance devices, and other nifty, strange, and usually hard-to-obtain products. They'll send you a brochure for $1. Research Is Company offers over 600 addresses contained in this video on self-adhesive labels for $45. These addresses are also available for $35 on disc. There is no quicker method for ascertaining someone's death than the Social Security Death Master File. The Death Master File can be accessed by name only, by name and date of birth, by Social Security number, by name and date of death, by first name only with date of birth. The total number of persons listed in the Master Death File is currently at 43 million. You can review the Death Master File of the parent to locate the next of kin of your subject. The Social Security Administration will not accept any request for Death Master File searches. Research Is Company charges $45 for each name search. This fee covers a list of up to 100 duplicate names returned for each name submitted that you request. The fee for over 100 duplicate names is $30 per 100. Another system that Research Is Company offers are files on World War II prisoners of war from both the Pacific and European theaters. If you know that your subject was a POW, then you might want to access the file. You may want to run your friend's name to see if he had taken another person's identity that died in Korea or Vietnam. You don't need to furnish a date of birth or a Social Security number. This search is conducted strictly by name. The cost is $40 for a list of up to 100 persons with the same name you submit. Call the appropriate state office listed and ask if your subject is wanted for failure to pay child support. You probably would be surprised by how many times a man that seems to be A-OK in every way owes child support. Remember, after you're married, you will also be liable for any debts of your husband. Back payments may run into the tens of thousands of dollars. Many viewers will be able to use the government to conduct a search for them. The first step in seeking the location of a subject that has an obligation to pay child support is to contact your state's Child Support Enforcement Office. They will first use the State Parent Locator Service. This service will check the records of other state agencies such as motor vehicle registration, unemployment insurance, state income tax, and correctional facilities. The Internal Revenue Service will disclose information from the tax return of the subject to the Child Support Office, which will be of assistance determining the subject's financial condition. If your friend was named in a petition to establish child support and for other relief, you will be able to ascertain the names and dates of birth of the children. This will be of importance to you because your subject will be paying this child support until the children are 18. That is assuming none of the children are retarded or handicapped to the point of not being able to support themselves when they are over 18, because if this is the case, then support will be mandated permanently. Here are some statistics supplied by the United States Department of Commerce, Economies, and Statistics Administration. The child support award rate for an unmarried woman was 24%. The award rate for married women was 72%. The poverty rate for all women with children from absent fathers was 32% in 1991. During the last reporting period, over 60% of absent fathers resided in the same state as their children. An additional 25.6% of absent fathers lived in another state. Women with 4 or more years of college were more likely to be awarded payments than women with less than a college education. Younger women with children from absent fathers are much more likely to have family incomes below the poverty level than their older counterparts. The number of women living with children whose father was absent from the home was 9,955,000 as of spring 1990, an increase of 39% in little more than a decade. If you find any of these addresses and phone numbers changed, you can contact the regional office serving your state. Even though some of this information does not pertain to checking out your new friend, it is important because the viewers of this video are predominantly female and may have a friend that could use this information or even need this information for themselves. This document from the county records indicates that this individual is in arrears for $7,607.29. Also note that a writ of bodily attachment has been issued. That's another way of saying that there is a warrant outstanding for his arrest. Make sure this situation has been resolved. This is another record that you will be able to obtain from divorce or child support files. After the deduction of $384.50 for child support, the father's net is $291.49. Are you aware that you will have to supplement this man's income if you marry him? Who has jurisdiction over an active duty service member? There's no simple answer, although obtaining jurisdiction over a person in the military should be no different than obtaining jurisdiction over anyone else. It can be complicated by details of military service. Finding a military member by military address should be the easiest element in the military support enforcement equation. There are several good sources for obtaining military addresses. You could use the Worldwide Military Locator Service. The work address of active duty military members can be obtained from the locator service of the appropriate military branch. Requests should contain the military member's full name and social security number. A military member stationed overseas will have an APO or FPO address in the continental United States. To determine the city and country a service member is actually stationed, consult the Postal Zip Code Directory. Fraternity establishment is often the most difficult aspect of the military child support equation. The military treats establishing paternity as a civilian matter and will not become directly involved in the process. Once a support order has been established, collections from a service member should be relatively simple. In light of the provisions of the Family Support Act of 1988, wage withholding is mandatory for most new or modified orders as of October 1, 1990. The locations for processing all of these actions are shown on the screen. There are a myriad of public records that can be accessed on the county level. Here is a list of the types of records you will find that contain information about your subject. If your subject had been at fault in an automobile accident, you will want to find out if a suit is to be filed naming your subject as the defendant. Voter's registration information is available upon written request. Write to the county you believe your subject may have been or is registered in. Voters' registrations may contain valid Social Security numbers, listed and unlisted phone numbers. In this case, the search was conducted back to 1974. You will note that the voter's registration card was canceled. This is good news because it indicates there was a card issued, and that card will contain the information you are seeking. Your subject may own a business but did not want to incorporate. He would be required to apply for a fictitious name. The application on file will provide you with addresses that may be new to you. Many counties require owners of independent businesses to apply for an occupational or vendor's license. Persons that arrange many details of their lives to avoid being found will overlook the fact that the license they had issued for their pet is public record. Pay special attention to any filing that involves your subject that is listed as power of attorney. You will want to know the person's name that your subject gave power of attorney to. If you are having difficulty in finding anything under your subject's name, this may be the reason why. Remember, you may wish to conduct an asset check to determine if your subject owns any property that you do not know about. Use the addresses in this video to check for ownership of automobiles, trucks, motorcycles, recreational vehicles, boats, aircraft, real estate, etc. The tax collector will have an alphabetical listing of all persons that paid property tax. Request that a search be conducted and specify the years. The tax collector maintains records that go back in time longer than any other record. If your subject had a telephone listed on the property records, then it becomes part of the public record. Do you know about this address? If your subject had a case filed in small claims court, you will want to order the complete file. The file will contain the address of the subject, any witnesses the subject subpoenaed to court, and details about the court case. You may want to review the subpoena the subject was served if the subject had been a defendant in the case. The subpoena will have noted the address the subject had been served at. You will also be able to retrieve any judgments against your subject by searching the county records. Are there any debts that your subject has failed to tell you about? This document was retrieved simply by looking up the individual's last name at the County Hall of Records. You will see that your subject may have a federal tax lien. You may be able to find a release of a lien when you are at the county's records department. This certificate of release of federal tax lien will assure you that the subject has fulfilled his obligations insofar as the federal portion of their taxes is concerned. This list of bar associations will be of assistance because you will retrieve records such as divorce, foreclosures, paternity suits, small claims court actions, support agreements, tax liens, and other legal instruments that have an attorney's name on them. Many of the records will be decades old. You can contact the Bar Association and they will give you the current address and telephone number of the attorney. It is important to note that you will be seeking the attorney of a spouse or someone who has sued your subject, and of course, you would have learned this name from these records. This attorney may be able to provide information unknown to you about your subject. You can do criminal background checks on the state, federal, and county level. These records are usually public information. The court keeps an alphabetical listing by defendant's name and charge. Some states will permit you to check on the state level for any record that was reported to them by the county. Check with the governor's office on their policy. Call the Bureau of Prisons at area code 202-307-3126 and ask if your friend has ever been an inmate of the federal prison system. You will not even need a social security number or date of birth. One of the best techniques to find out about the lifestyle of your subject is to run an incident report check on any addresses he has lived at. Almost all police agencies on the local level keep reports about any incidents that have occurred at a certain address. You can submit the address to the police agencies of jurisdiction, and they will give you a printout of all police responses to the address for, usually, the past 3 years. Responses to a particular home address will reveal police dispatches even for minor incidents such as noise complaints from neighbors, or serious complaints such as assault and battery reports. The state licenses many professions, trades, and crafts. Write to the Secretary of State and submit your subject's name to be searched for any licensure by the state. Of course, the most important information will be the addresses you are given, but you may want to take special note of any complaints filed. There are over 3,500 colleges and universities in the United States. If you are aware of the institution of higher learning which your subject attended, then inquiring about directory information may yield more facts. The term directory information is used to describe the information that the school will release to the public about the student. Even though you have no reason to believe that your friend has ever won the lottery, you may want to check. All winners who had single tickets with over $600 must give their name, address, and social security number to collect. Write to the State Lottery Commission in the state or states in which your subject has spent time. You may want to search for lottery winnings in your subject's wife or ex-wife's name. Your friend may have community property wealth he may not have told you about. Even if your subject tries to hide home addresses on other public records, the subject may have been issued a license for hunting or fishing if this is his sport. Write to the state and submit a request asking that a search be conducted on your subject so that you may ascertain if he has a hunting or fishing license. If you are successful with your inquiry, you will receive the subject's current address and the current status of the license. Several states have recently become completely computerized in the hunting and fishing license division, so their records are actually more accessible than before. Most states do not charge for inquiries regarding hunting and fishing licenses. These responses indicate a thorough search was conducted, free of charge. And these are the addresses to write to. The registration of a boat or vessel is a source that is often overlooked, but can produce the same desired results as other more commonly used public records. Request an alpha search if you do not have the subject's date of birth. Remember, you are looking for co-owners' names, which will give you new avenues to explore. You may find out that you were not told about recreational delights, such as elaborate boats and yachts. Where did the money come from, and where did it go? As is the case with hunting and fishing licenses, there is usually no charge for inquiring about boat registrations. If you receive a response that states your subject does not have any boat or vessel ownership, then you may want to check any ownership under his company name. He may have chosen to hide his ownership because he is aware that this would become a marital asset when you marry. Find out if he has any corporations under his name. Even though you are unaware that he may own a business, you will still want to check with corporations. Many individuals don't have any business entity at all, but use the corporation to hide assets. Under the Freedom of Information Act, you are permitted access to the following information about military personnel: full name, rank, gross salary, past duty assignments, awards and decorations, attendance at military schools. Write to the appropriate address listed here so you can ascertain whether your subject was in the military. What awards and decorations did he really get? Where had he been stationed? You may obtain a forwarding address for your subject by paying the Postal Service a $3 fee. You may make your request by mail if the post office is some distance from you. Check to see if your friend has his mail forwarded to an address you may not know about. If your subject is a pilot or owns an aircraft, you may write to the Federal Aviation Administration. A search will be conducted by name. You may wish to order a list of any aircraft your subject may own. If there is a listing of an aircraft, you will be given the address at which the aircraft is registered, the year and the make of the aircraft, the name of pilots that will utilize the aircraft, and the name of the insurance carrier. If your subject is in any form of the transportation business that crosses state lines, there will be records with important information on file. The Interstate Commerce Commission regulates moving companies, trucking firms, and many other entities that use the nation's interstate highway system. The General Services Administration's function is to evaluate and award contracts to firms so that they may supply products or services to the federal government. If your subject is a business person that may have conducted business with the federal government, then you will want to request photocopies of the files. Your subject may be a veteran of the armed forces which made an appeal to the United States Court of Veterans' Appeals. In some instances, cases are filed decades after the veteran had been separated from the service. Much information, such as Social Security number, date of birth, and home address, will be in this public record. The United States Court of Military Appeals was created by Congress in 1950 and is composed of 3 civilian judges. You will want to order a photocopy of your subject's complete court file if he has ever availed himself of this avenue of redress. The file will contain information you will need. The United States Claims Court may have been used by your subject to make a claim against the federal government. Write and order a photocopy of the court file. Congress created the United States Tax Court to provide a forum whereby a taxpayer may dispute a deficiency in taxes claimed by the Internal Revenue Service. Write to the tax court for a photocopy of the court file if you believe your subject may have had a case heard in this arena. Many times, you will need the telephone number and address of an agency of the federal government at which you believe a subject may be employed. You want to check employment status with the least amount of delay. These toll-free telephone numbers are of great assistance. The operators that staff these centers have access to every telephone number and address in the federal government. Call area code 301-722-9098 if your state is not listed or if one of the above telephone numbers is inoperable. Many libraries in larger cities are designated Federal Depository Libraries. These are very helpful in locating directories and other documents. Here is a list of all United States passport agencies. It's a good idea to keep a valid passport. A visit to another country may be required when you do background checks. There are instances when someone's friend will take off with money and valuables. You'll be able to follow the trail without waiting for the lengthy passport application process. Your subject may have had a period in his life he has chosen not to tell you about. Perhaps he ran out on his wife, his children, his employer, his girlfriend, or even the law. He may have left some of his possessions. In most instances, the state takes possession of the following if a person has disappeared for at least 7 years. Bank accounts, state income tax refunds, payroll checks, overpayment of insurance premiums, credit balance on credit cards, utility refunds, dividend checks, annuity checks, telephone deposit refunds, safe deposit boxes. Each state maintains an alphabetical listing of all persons who have had properties or monies held in escrow by the state. Write to any state in which your subject may have resided or in which he may have conducted any business. If you find property held in your subject's name, simply write to the state asking for the full file. You will see where he lived, what valuables he left, if relatives had made a claim, etc. If your subject had to leave so suddenly that he did not take all of his possessions, it would be wise to ask him about it. The book version of When in Doubt, Check Him Out contains even more helpful hints and addresses, including a listing for every county in the United States. In 1992, the number of individuals filing for bankruptcy was 839,621. If you have reason to believe your subject has ever filed for bankruptcy or will file for bankruptcy, these records are an excellent source to retrieve background information. They are public information. The petition file will contain the subject's Social Security number, date of birth, current and former address, names of any children, bank accounts, stock ownership, employment history, including a list of the salaries and fringe benefits earned for the past several years, and a list of all property, including vehicles and other important financial and personal information. Compare this information to what your subject has told you to be true. If your subject had a spouse, her Social Security number, date of birth, and other vital information will be included in this file. The vehicle identification number, or VIN, of each vehicle listed as an asset in the bankruptcy proceeding will be listed. You may access the current address of each vehicle by writing to the appropriate motor vehicle department. When the background profile on your subject does not reveal a driver's license, vehicle or boat registration, a license for one of the hundreds of professions that require licensing by the state, or any of the other facets of a normal paper trail, then turn to the Workers' Compensation Bureau. Persons who receive benefits from the Workers' Compensation Bureau are those who have suffered injuries during the performance of their jobs. Your subject may be a complete phony and may be collecting monies from workers' compensation. Many states will provide a complete file which, of course, may yield information including addresses, previous employers, spouses, dependents, and more. It is important to remember that states may change their policies on releasing compensation information. A person is listed in state corporate records if he is an officer, director, or registered agent. Write to the Corporation Division of your state government. Most states will be able to provide a list of all persons with a particular name, the names of the corporations with which they are associated, and the addresses of the corporations. Many times the home addresses will be listed for officers and directors in small corporations. The corporate division will also conduct a search that will generate a list of all persons with a particular name who have a Uniform Commercial Code transaction. The UCC in most states is a transaction that is intended to create a security interest in personal property or fixtures including goods, documents, instruments, general intangibles, chattel paper, or a contract that creates a security interest in a chattel trust, trust deed, equipment trust, conditional sale, trust receipt, and lease or consignment intended as security. If your subject has, for example, ever lent money or equipment to someone who has opened a business or has borrowed money or equipment, then he would be listed in UCC transactions. When you get the name of the corporations in which your subject is involved, you'll want to check for automobiles, boats, planes, property, etc. under the corporation name. Your subject may be sharp and has hidden his past well, but if he was in the service, you may want to use the National Cemetery System. You can use the National Cemetery System to find dependents of the subject. If your subject was in the Armed Forces, the Reserves, or a member of the Public Health Service, your subject may have dependents who are buried in one of the national cemeteries. If your subject has a family member buried, write and ask for the records of interment. This will yield information about your subject, including date of birth, social security number, and addresses. Is this information the same as he told you? If you unexpectedly learn about a deceased spouse, then there may be children of which you were not informed. Remember, children can make a claim against the estate after you marry your subject and he dies. Or you may find that your subject has children buried of which you aren't aware, and that may mean there is an ex-wife or current wife that may be able to make claims against an estate you and the subject may accumulate.